maybe get out earlier, but definitely at 2 o'clock there'll be a hard break. So I want y'all to be able to learn as much as possible and ask questions, and that this be as productive as possible. But I guess before we start, if Dr. Mealy would like to give the invocation.
Let's pray. Father, we thank you for your blessing upon us. Thank you for our schools and for the leaders. Thank you for our students and the privilege that we have to work with them. We pray for those in authority and in leadership in our state, and pray that you will give them wisdom as they give direction. Bless our time here together and help us in all that we do to honor you in Jesus' name.
Amen. Well, first, thank you all for coming. It's a Sunday afternoon, a beautiful Sunday afternoon. You could be anywhere in the world, and you are here listening to how to improve education in South Carolina. So you are to be commended. This is a great group. I wish we were tenfold considering what the topic is. And that is something that, and if you got to meet Clay Counts in the front, he and I, we feel that there's a lack of a group that provides information here in Pickens County, and we want to be that. It's a nonpartisan. Nothing today is going to be coming from Republican, from Democrat. It's all about where we are in education in South Carolina, what we're currently doing under Chairwoman Allison's leadership, and where we may go. So we're going to have, hopefully, monthly meetings. I'll announce at the end what we're doing for next month, and hopefully we can at least be an option for people to know what's going on in their county and state. I do want to welcome some elected people, actually a lot of elected people here, and hopefully I won't miss anybody, so I'll just go around table to table. But Judge Clary out of Clemson represents in the State House. We have Joy Grayson, school board trustee in Greenville County. We have Chairman Davey Hyatt out of Pickens. Going around. Senator Larry Martin here in Pickens County. Superintendent Danny Mert in Pickens County. Dr. Brian Swords, school board member for Pickens County. Did I miss anybody? Yes, ma'am.
Linda LaVentus Wells, Greenville County School District.
All right. Well, thank y'all for coming. And now I'd just like to introduce Chairwoman Allison. She has served in the South Carolina House from 1993 to 2002. Then 2009 to present. She also has education background, serving as a school board member, education advisor for Governor Sanford, and in multiple education-focused organizations. But on a personal note, she is my chairwoman, and I wouldn't say this, I wouldn't say that, I'm not just saying this because she's here, but both Judge and I are extremely lucky that we were placed under Chairwoman Allison, being freshmen, learning the ropes, and being able to grow as a member. She has definitely allowed that to happen, and not so much for Judge, but controlling me is probably half of her job, and she does a great job. Well, I guess some people say no. But just, she has been described, and I won't name the person, but has been described as the Dabo of South Carolina education.
As a game clock, that's great.
So we don't know, depending on what part of the state, she's either really good or really bad. But I think, you know, she's, just so you know, she's the chairwoman of the House Education Committee. Speaker Lucas created a task force for education reform after the Abbeville decision, and she is the chairwoman for that. That has resulted in 8 bills. 5 bills have been passed through the House as of today, and those are sitting on your tables there if you want to look at what the brief summaries are. But with that being said, just like to give the floor to Representative Allison, and we'll go from there.
Thank you so much. It is really a joy to be here with you, and especially on a Sunday afternoon. Jonelle and I were talking about how we would like, you know, just thousands of people, much like somebody we watch on TV a lot, that would come out for afternoon things. But just let me say that I appreciate you being here on a Sunday afternoon, especially your interest as parents as legislators, as people that are in the trenches with our boards, people that are teaching every day where the rubber hits the road, and our superintendent, all of you that touch education in a very special way, parents and students and all. So thank you very much. It's great to be with my colleagues today, and great to be with two of the people that serve so well from this area on our education and public works. Just want to share a moment with you about education and public works. A lot of people say to me, I can't believe that we have those two things together, because under education in our committee, we have everything from early childhood to higher ed. Over on the public works area, we have transportation, we have the DMV, we have the Department of Public Safety, your highway patrol, aviation, rail, all of that comes under that public works area. And a lot of times people don't understand, and I guess I still don't understand why both of those things are together, but they function well. And when I look at the committee, all of them serve on a K-12 higher education committee, but they also serve on a public works committee too. So the entire public works education committee has had an extremely busy year thus far. But I feel real good about the direction that this committee and these hardworking people have been able to pull us through. There's not a person on this committee that doesn't understand how important education is to this state. And I've seen that firsthand to their in-depth work ethic, their ability to spend long hours and to study things. And my colleagues that are here from the Senate and the House know that you don't really read for pleasure anymore. You read all the things that come across your desk in order to stay up to date. We also realize how important education is, not just to the nation, but especially to South Carolina, in order for us to continue to move forward as a state. It is all about the jobs. If you don't have an educated or skilled workforce, we will not be able to continue to bring the jobs here, or to have those established foundation businesses that we already have here to have people to work. It also has to do with a healthier society, because people who are educated and understand education and how much it means to be educated about your body and your family and your children, then they know better how to take care of themselves healthy. So it's all about a healthier. It's about children growing up and bringing about their own quality of life. So we do understand how important education is. We understand that parents and students drive our education system. We also understand that parents have choices in making that education system the best for their students. And as we traveled and faced the Abbeville case, we realized very quickly that it's not all about money. It's not all about money. Now, at the end of the day, we may have to have more money to implement various things that are going to be helpful. But it's a long thing about leadership development, teacher development, visionary, and it's all about having the tools to work with on a day-to-day basis. We are struggling in the state of South Carolina and across this nation for good teachers right now. We're having less and less students go into the teaching profession. Many might want to say that maybe it has to do with the market and the pay scale. I think it has more to do about the profession of teaching and how over the years we as a society hasn't realized how important that profession is to our future and needs to be always put in that position. So we believe very strongly about our education. Today I don't prove to be an authority on education, but I want to share with you some of the things that have gone on in the House, have left the House, and are either sitting in the Senate right now waiting on them to get through deliberations on various things in order to get to them, and to the point where they will receive the budget to look at that kind of thing. This year, in 2015, we passed some legislation. We looked at our charter schools in the state of South Carolina. We looked at how they differ from other public education and even private education in the state. And we were able ethically to put them on a more level playing field for their teachers and their ability to go. We also took some of the ability for the legislature to always have to talk about snow days and gave some ability back to you, the board members, to make some decisions about that and to give you that opportunity to do that so that it did not become a government legislative situation, because no two districts in this state are alike and different things happen to those districts in different ways. We also looked this year, and the House has passed some of this, and we're waiting, like I said, on the Senate, instructions on CPR. One of the things that we're very conscious of is mandating to our districts things that they have to do. They're not financed, and we put extra burden on them. CPR has been something that we have discussed and are debating, and it's very important that our young people coming along, as well as our adults, know how to administer that and all. But to mandate to our districts that they have to find time to do that, or they even have to pay for the equipment and all, has been upmost in our mind, and we're working through those kind of things. We've also been looking at the closing of Martin Luther King Jr. and Memorial Day holidays for our school districts, as well with celebrating our holidays for our young people has been tremendously important, and giving school districts the opportunity to do that without there being a cause for people coming back and saying that should not be done in our schools. Think about young people and their opportunity to do those kind of things. We've also talked about diplomas for Korean and Vietnam War veterans, allowing their opportunities. And then we decided this year, not just us, but the chambers here today, we talked about businesses, chamber, businesses, both small and large, in your state, who talked about how important it is to have a profile for a graduate. And to look at that diploma that they get in the 12th grade, and to be able to say that diploma means something for a career, or I'm ready for a college career. So we looked at the diploma and we looked at the profile of the student to have them to be career and college ready when they graduate from high school and when they get that diploma in their hand. All of that has been adopted, and one of the pieces of legislation that you see on your desk is that your General Assembly and the state of South Carolina have embraced that profile of the student, to mean that all students will not go to college. All students don't want to go to college. All students shouldn't go to college. But all students should have the opportunity for a good career, or to have that opportunity to mess up. I want to talk to you just briefly. We talk about assessments in the state, and we talk about how much testing that we have going on in the state. And you all who are educators know that right now we test 3 through 8. We test at the end of course in 4 subjects, and we do work keys in the 11th grade. One of the things that has been talked about, especially through the Abbeville case, is that if we allow our students to take an ACT, SAT, or whatever in the 11th grade along with work keys, and they need to have remediation, that 12th grade should be the place that they have remediation. Right now in this state, when they graduate in the 12th grade, they use, most of the time, if they're going on to college, use the first 2 years of technical college for their remediation. For those students who are not going on for a 4-year degree, wouldn't it be good if they knew in the 11th grade where they are, medium or below, and need remediation, that they too would be able to use that 12th grade for remediation and then be able to step right in to a technical college for training and career readiness. I had a gentleman that sat in my office the other day with the Trucking Association, and he said, Rita, we are begging for truck drivers. 385 over here that is behind schedule on being redone. One of the reasons that they haven't been able to dig up the concrete in Burley is because they don't have truck drivers for the dump trucks to carry off in a steady stream what they dig up. And of course, you know as well as I do what that would do to traffic on 85 that is bogged down with traffic today. And truck drivers make a good salary. But to get a CDL and get the training they have, less and less are going into that profession. So we hear every day how important it is for our students to be ready for a career or ready for a 4-year college. And by talking about the profile of the student and being able to embrace that and look at ways that we can move them, then the better we're going to be. When we started looking at the Abbeville case this year, there were 2 things upmost in our mind. Number one, if you have a crisis in your house and you have no idea how much it's going to take to fill those crises, then you're going to be able to have to look at what your problems are. And we were committed this year in the task force, 17 that the speaker appointed, and I will tell you that they came from all walks of life. There were educators. They were educators from the plaintiff districts. They were business people. They were technical people. They were parents. They were students. We have a full-blown student advisory committee that's coming to Columbia March the 16th, one from every plaintiff district, to talk about what the students need in that area. What do they feel like they need in order to get rid of the apathy? As one young man said to me, what is it? Tell me about your school district. And he said, Ms. Allison, I walk in here every morning without any hope. I don't have hope. But to be able to hear from them what their needs are, we have a full-blown advisory committee. But over and beyond that, we wanted to find out what the real problems were. So we had some 5 meetings of testimony and hearings. Parents came, students came, faith-based groups came, private schools came, educators came, community people came to talk about what their real needs were. The second thing that we wanted to make sure we didn't do is we did not want to take away from those districts in the state of South Carolina that are moving and flourishing and have the leadership and have the development and the tools that they need. We didn't want to take away from them. So we felt like the only way we were going to be able to accomplish that was to go firsthand. So we traveled to Abbeville. We traveled to Dillon County. We had any and everybody that wanted to come and talk to us and listen to us, to have something to say about what was going on. And then we came back and we had 5 subcommittees. And those subcommittees were made up of what we heard. The things we heard were that we have infrastructure and we have transportation problems. Now we have that all over the state, but especially in those plaintiff districts, 33 of them. Number one, a 54-passenger bus, of which we usually buy those size buses, may be going down a 3 or 4 mile road and picking up 1 child. So what did we hear? We need to talk about, with every district, what size buses do you need? You know, what is your replacement? We also talked about, we buy buses. We're the Lone Star State of being the last state that has their own transportation. But we talked about what's wrong with the possibility of maybe going out and leasing buses. Could we take care of the fleet quicker turnover if we were able to lease them? So a lot of good stuff came out of that transportation. The other thing we found out is that in this state, The state as a whole really doesn't know what the infrastructure needs are in this state. We don't really know how much deferred maintenance we need. We really don't know what schools need to just be renovated. We don't know where empty schools are sitting like this one could have been, but is used as a community and office and that kind of thing. And we didn't know exactly how many need all new buildings. So what we suggested is that we need to have an efficiency study and report made for the infrastructure needs of the state. And then once we know, then we can start to build from the bottom up of the infrastructure needs and start to look for a stream of money that goes into that infrastructure bank, or whatever you want to call it, that will go specifically for the renovations, deferred maintenance, building of new buildings. Because if you don't know what you're dealing with, you don't know how much money you need and if you need it. So that was the first one. The second one was that we realized that while we have got some great leadership in this state, we have areas of this state that have been, I would say, beaten down long enough that there's no vision, there's no real development there. They need revitalization in leadership ability. And if they can't give that, then we need to look at what and where we can help to build that. The same thing with teachers. Young teachers graduating from school, if they can't get a job in one of your districts that's doing well, and they have to go to that area, they go and stay just long enough to get a contract somewhere else, and they move over. You know better than I what that does to students. Turnover with faculty is rampant in those areas. Also, I went into a school in one of those districts, and we've traveled the last 2 Mondays actually visiting in the schools. Met a precious young man, one of 7 in the middle. His older brother was incarcerated. He's a great student. He's not an athlete. The only thing that the school has was a basketball and football team. Great, but not for him. He said, Ms. Allison, we don't have any clubs. We don't have a beta club. I said, how many in your school might be able to join a beta club? Maybe 12 in the school. But those were the problems. He's the one that said to me, I'm excelling academically, but I don't really have a lot of hope in this school. We lack the hope here. It was those kind of things that we kept hearing. We heard, I never asked one of those students, would you go back to your community? Little girl wanted to be a nurse. Would you come back here? No, ma'am, I won't, because we don't have a hospital anywhere near, nor do we have a doctor's office. So those were the things that I heard. So leadership is tremendously important in those areas. So leadership development, knowing how to work with children of poverty. Francis Marion has a course right now, curriculum. Tammy Pulaski teaches it. And it's all about how you deal with children who come from poverty. They don't hear exactly the same things that other children hear. They haven't been introduced to some of the things that our children have been introduced to. So being able to understand that and deal with that is a tremendous opportunity, but it's also a tremendous challenge for many of those teachers. But those young teachers, that young man said to me, I said, what's your favorite subject? He said, I love math, but do you know that 35% of our teachers in this school and the entire math department are from India? I said, no, how does that work? He said, well, you know, they move their head a lot when they teach. And he said, you know, I understand that, but a lot of the students think they're saying no to them all the time because they move their head. And if you've noticed, that's just a cultural situation with them. But 35% of the faculty in that was from India. Not anything wrong with that, but that's another reason to tell you that we're getting less and less teachers into our areas, and especially into those blighted areas. the entire main street of one town boarded up. I said to a young lady, let me ask you this, if a teacher came here, would there be housing for them? Well, yes, ma'am, but they'd have to go unboarded. We've got lots of houses out here, but they're boarded up. The only activity in that community is around the school. Everything that goes on. The principal of that school lives in Columbia, commutes back and forth every day. And he said, you know, because there's a lack of recreation and all in our community, we started having Saturday classes and clubs and activities. But he said it was wearing me out because after football on Friday night, I would drive back to Columbia and then get up at the crack of dawn and drive back on Saturday for the activity. If it doesn't go on in the school in that community, it doesn't go on at all. So we found very quickly leadership development, teacher development, retention and recruitment of teachers was very, very vital in that area. We also talked about technical assistance. Do you realize, and of course our educators here do, that in order for the State Department of Education to be able to come and help you, be able to come and look at your program plans, to look at even your financial, if you're having problems there, is that you almost have to fold in order for them to come. Your accreditation has to go out the window, or you're financially insolvent. Those are the two ways that they can come in to help you. One piece of this legislation gives an Office of Transformation for the State Department of Education. This opens up the door for them to keep check on our districts, to take a look at those who are having difficulties, and it's showing up in either academics or financial or programs or whatever the problem is, and to be able to send technical assistance into those districts to help them to get back on solid footing and that kind of thing, in order to help them with their teacher recruitment, to help them. Sarah, which is our Center of Recruitment and Retention for Teachers, is going to do a survey. This was another area. I went to a law class not long ago at the University of South Carolina, and we were talking about the Abbeville case, and I said to a room of potential lawyers, what would it take for you to go to one of those plaintiff districts and set up a practice? One little guy way up in the back said money. Money was the one thing that would get him to go set up a practice. And I dare say that that money probably couldn't be enough because of the atmosphere that he would be in. Plus, he probably would not have that many clients. The same thing goes with teachers. Being able to have a place to live. If you have a family, your husband or wife probably wouldn't be able to get a job in that area. You certainly might not want to have to send your children. And thirdly, you have no housing, no recreation. In many of those places, you have to travel 50 miles to go to a movie. One town had a Piggly Wiggly, a McDonald's, and a Hardee's, and that was it for the town. Everything else was boarded up. I tell you the bleakness there, but I also tell you the opportunity. So we decided as a committee that what we brought back to the House to take a look at would be what the problems are, how we're going to face those problems, and then we'd talk about if it's going to take extra money. Because there's a lot within the education system in this state that can cure those ills right now if we give them the opportunity to deregulate some areas, to get out of the way and let them take on those kind of things. So those were the things that we looked at this year, and that is, if you go online right now to the State Department or to our House, you can pull up that and you can pull up the recommendations and you can pull up the findings. All of the recommendations came from the findings. You won't find any recommendation out there from the Abbeville case that there was not a findings first for it. And in this year, in looking at the budget, there again, I want to say we did not want to do anything in the Abbeville case to help them that was going to hinder those of our state that were doing very well. One of the things that we looked at, and right now in the House, and you understand that the budget is going to be debated in the House on the week of the 21st of this month. So we've got a long way to go with the budget. But right now in the House budget, there's $130 added to the base student cost, which is going to bring it up to $2,350 per student for the base student cost. If that I can get wild sometimes. If that, thank you. If that,
We're used to it.
you're used to it. Okay. If we hold that is what we're going to do. We're going to be able to add, a recommendation was to add dual enrollment weighting because so many of our children are looking for those dual enrollments. Here again, if you are established in the 11th grade and know where you're going and you're medium to above on that assessment, then you're all about dual credits, AP classes, and moving right along, which is great for you. And so we have put a weighting in. That's about 12,000 of our students it's based on. We also looked at an increase in our teacher's salary, and we'll see how that holds. Right now, I would say just about every one of our districts are above 29,000, but starting teachers start at 29,000. If you think about housing and all the other things, it makes it very difficult at times. In fact, in a couple of places we found that their salary was poverty level. So starting teacher's salary has been looked at, as well as the step, you know, at the end of the step, and there's several little things that are going on now about accreditation and those kind of things that are being discussed for at the end. We also realize how important virtual, how many of you educators here use virtual in your schools now? Okay, we found that that could possibly be a lifesaver for the Abbeville area. When you can't get a math teacher, you can't get an AP. One little girl told me that she was in AP in her classes. She said, but my AP English is the same as my regular English class. If you can't find the teacher that can teach it, virtual can be a possibility. And we talked to the districts in the Abbeville about, could you leave a teacher in the room to make sure that they get it, but can we do more of AP work and other critical areas like math and all? Can we do that virtual? So we've looked at trying to improve, but there are so many of our districts. How many of your districts here are all set up with broadband, you've got the Wi-Fi, you're all put together? Okay? Many of our districts are not there. So, and especially in the Abbeville area. So you need to know that we're going to have to invest in making sure that they get up. Some of those buildings probably wouldn't accommodate it at all. But that is another thing. School buses, we're still looking in the budget at a 15 replacement cycle, but we're also talking about the possibility of leasing buses and that kind of thing. And I think one of the things that we have to understand, if you lease, and my colleagues will understand this, is you will be forced to give a certain amount every year, will have to be put in the budget for that lease. So that has been some of the things that we've been talking about. The EEDA, which is the Education Economic Development Act that passed some years ago, before recession it passed, and when recession came along, it was not funded. And a lot of our career specialists and all didn't get funded, and it did not. In some areas of our state, it is flourishing, and it is a great help for those young people moving along. In some of our areas, it did not work. So we're looking at revitalizing that with our career specialists and that kind of thing, and also bringing back that coordinating council. The other thing that we found, and I think that, and I commend Neil and my other colleagues here for being willing And Joe Neal and I talked about the fact that we'd like to see more and more and more people, but people have got to come together and talk through the situations and understand them. I do not mind being criticized at all about anything if you're willing to sit down with me and let's work through it. Let me learn from you and you learn the facts or whatever from me. That's where we need to get. And it's so much that way with education, is being able to know the facts and know the reality of it and moving together through that. So the more we can share with people, the more people understand about it, and the more we listen, the better. We've also got the assessment of our facilities is in our budget this year. We also looked at bus driver salaries, and there is a proposal. Did you realize right now that to get bus drivers' minimum salary up to minimum wage of $7.46 per hour, that is where the state would. Now, a lot of our local districts compensate, and many of them are paying $10 and $14, you know, for bus drivers. A lot of them have worked out to have a teacher assistant drive a bus. Then they become vested in the system. But in the plaintiff districts, they didn't have, I mean, bus drivers were, you know, really a bad situation. Some of them driving 2 and 3 routes, which means basically the law talks to us about not leaving a child on a bus more than 90 minutes. Some of those children are on buses much longer than that. That is taking away from you know, being at home, hopefully with the family, or being able to do homework and those kind of things. So we've looked at that and looked at how we can help bus drivers get up above. Right now, with a minimum, I think the state only covers about $4 of that, if I'm correct. So the local is having to make that up, but we looked at that. Hazardous transportation. You may have some of that in your area, but more and more of our rural areas where a child, right now it's 1.5 miles that a bus, otherwise a child walks that 1.5 miles. Living in the day and time we live in, that can be very hazardous for a young child. So we looked at hazardous pay to be put into the budget so that those districts that have to get waivers on that could look at that. We also looked at technology. We also looked at 4K for our, you know, 4K right now is a public-private early childhood in our state. And I'm very vested in it staying public-private. But at the same time, we've got to make sure that all public and private are quality programs for our young people. Because if a child is not ready to start school, if they're not ready to step into that first grade, you as educators know what happens. Usually by the 3rd grade, they're having difficulties. And then once you lose them there, we lose them all the way up the line. So to be able to have good early childhood programs, and our early childhood First Steps program in the state, which is about public-private, we're doing a lot of good evaluation on that now to take a look at how we can strengthen that and really hold it accountable for a quality program all across the state. Doing well in many, many areas, but there are still some areas that are lacking. And then the technical assistance that I mentioned earlier, there is some monies in the budget, in the House budget this year that goes to the State Department of Education to provide that technical assistance to those districts that are struggling. And those schools, before they get to the point where it is truly affecting the students in that school, that we're able to give them some help. Adult education, our vocational equipment, all of those are in it. And then under the lottery this year, we are looking at some instructional material, buses, and some other things that bring that along. The Abbeville case was truly an education, I think, for everybody that worked on it. It was an education in that there are schools in this state, public, that I would put up against anybody in the nation But we're only gonna be as strong in this state publicly as our weakest links. And we do have those weak links. And we need to continue to look at what we're doing as a state and to move them along. I will tell you that the faith base in those areas stepped up to the plate. They attended the meetings. They're willing to give. Very few private schools in those areas. Very few private schools in those areas. Opportunities there, you know, no matter how many opportunities for some, there will always be the bulk of our children in a public school. I think parents should have a choice to do what they need to do, but they will always be the bulk of our children, especially in our rural areas, and especially in those areas that are high in poverty. For me, it was, you know, they had not been able to, because of all the flooding and the rain, they had not been able to harvest the cotton in the areas. They were, you know, the fields were standing deep in water and that kind of thing. And that's mainly their livelihood in many of those areas. So I tell you, there's great opportunity there for us this year to bring them along. And I know that the Senate will be getting the budget and they will be looking at that. They now have the 6 bills that you have on your table. They will be looking at those things, and they've had a wonderful committee that has been meeting also on the Abbeville case, and I think the things that they have learned based on the things that 17-person committee in the House, I think together they will come up with some great opportunities through the challenges to make things better for our state. Not so much about a court case, but it's the right thing to do. It's the right thing to do for those young people coming along. And when you look and know that there's no economic development in those areas, we also know if we don't have the education, if they're not educated or career ready, then it's not going to come there. You can't make an industry come. I remember BMW sits in my district, and I remember that when all the debate was going on, one of the things that they pledged to do was to hire in a 50-mile radius to their industry. They have expanded that industry 2 and 3 times since they built. Torrey that's there, any of the things that come to our state rely heavily on an experienced, a skilled, or an educated. And I know that I want to say one thing. This state, with parents and students, educators and all, took what we heard about Common Core, and they sat down with our state standards and with Common Core, and they based on what Common Core was asking us to do and what state standards said at the time, and they built our state standards. We have state standards now, and I hear a lot of people talk, and I hear my daughter talk, because I have 3 little boys that are in school, 2 of them that are in school, 3rd and 4th grade, so you can imagine their math situation. But I hear a lot of talk about the Common Core math and that kind of thing. We're pushing ahead with South Carolina standards. I will say to you about the Common Core math, as we push through that, your students will end up being able to step wherever they should when it comes to math and that kind of thing. Had a professor that said to me the other day, the math that we're doing now is what industry of the future is going to require of our students. They're going to require that you all sit in a room and Davy may have an idea. They're going to want to know what Jonelle's idea is. They're going to listen to all the ideas of how you get there.